Hello everyone, I'm Simon Ford of Ford's Gin. Martinis, gin and tonics, Negronis, great classic cocktails is what I'm about. But I also love to hear from great bartenders from around the world, which is why we've partnered with Beyond the Drink for this season. Cheers.
Well, you just heard from the man himself, Simon Ford, and we're glad this season of Beyond the Drink is once again brought to you by our friends at Ford's Gin. I'm Cappy, and in this series, we're going behind the bar. It's time to explore the journeys of the world's best bartenders, uncovering their passion, the latest gin trends, and of course, the social impact they make in their community. Beyond the Drink airs every other week, right here on Beyond the Plate. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you've listened before, we're glad you're back. Let's go Beyond the Drink. Cheers. Today's guest is a 5-time Beyond the Drink guest, Simon Ford. He's the co-founder of the 86 Company and the co-founder and co-creator of Ford's Gin, and truly one of the leading voices in the spirits and cocktails industry. When the conversation turns to gin, his name comes up more often than not. Bartenders often credit him for helping shape today's gin landscape in the US. More on him in the episode notes, or you can follow him on Instagram at Simon Ford's Gin. Please enjoy this episode as we go Beyond the Drink with Simon Ford. Good to have you back, sir.
It's good to be back 5 times. And you're not sick of
5 times? No, I'll take it. Keep it coming. All right. So, Simon, I always love hearing about what you and the Ford's team have going on. So, first things first, tell us what's new in the wonderful world of Ford's Gin these days.
Actually, I just come back from doing a launch party for the very second batch we have ever made of Slow Gin, or the Ford's version of Slow Gin. We did one back during COVID. It was a very small release, a couple of thousand cases. And we've sort of come back with even less, actually, just 1,000 cases. It's a really fun category though, Andrew. It's like if you go to England, there are the rolling hills all across England that we're sort of famous for, England's famous for. And those hedges grow a fruit called sloe. And if you are someone that lives in the countryside, it is very likely that during the fall season, the autumn, you'll go out and forage for these sloes. They're abundant and everywhere, and they've been abundant and everywhere in England for hundreds of years. And so sloe gin has been made in England for hundreds of years too. And it really became popularized in 1861 when Mrs. Beeton, who was the Martha Stewart of her day, wrote the Book of Household Management. And in it were 2 recipes for sloe gin. And then everyone started making it at home, and they sort of still do it. Well, in the United States, you used to have a version of sloe in the 70s that wasn't made with the sloes. I think it was just sort of artificially flavored. And the category sort of went away because it had a bad reputation. But there are a few gin companies out there trying to do it the traditional way, which is pick the sloes, steep them in the gin, and turn them into a gin liqueur. So that's what we've done. We've done batch 2, and we're going to do one every year now. We're going to go and pick fresh sloe every year, and it will be like our Beaujolais Nouveau Day.
I love it. And sloe, for everybody listening, sloe spelled S-L-O-E, correct? The sloe berry. And what does it look like?
It's a very rich ruby. Well, the berry, I guess it's not really a berry, it's a drupe, it's a sloe, it's related to the plum. And so it's very plum-like, slightly smaller than a plum, but it's actually very bitter in its flavor, which is what is beautiful about sloe for me, because even though it's a gin liqueur, it needs to be a gin liqueur because you have to add some sugar to balance the bitterness of the fruit. And so you get this beautiful bittersweet flavor coming through from the fruit and sugar, and then that's sort of lifted by the fact that it's been steeped in gin with all of the complex botanicals. So it's a wonderful, wonderful kind of full flavor, really, because it's got those plums, those apricots and damsons. It's all those types of sort of stone fruit flavors that really come through. And so it's a delicious product, and it's sort of famously drunk in a slow gin fizz, which is essentially a gin fizz. You can do it with the egg white too, if you wish, and get that nice froth, fresh lemon juice, and just have a tall, refreshing drink. Many, many moons ago, just after Prohibition ended, the Waldorf Astoria in New York, they had a house cocktail called the Charlie Chaplin, which actually blended it with a little bit of apricot brandy. And so that's quite famous. And in Mrs. Beeton's book in 1861, there's actually a recipe for a slow gin cocktail. And that slow gin cocktail is half regular London dry gin, half slow gin. So it's almost like a 50-50 martini and 10 dashes of orange bitters. And I do want to shout out, 1861 is a year before Jerry Thomas wrote the infamous very first cocktail book, How to Mix Drinks. And so Mrs. Beeton was sort of having a dabble before she heard of Mr. Thomas, which is quite a cool story. So shout out to all the ladies who didn't get the credit they deserved for the work that they did with Mrs. Beaton bringing sloe gin to the world and putting punches and cocktails and cobblers in her book in 1861.
That's so wild. And so you mentioned the sloe gin fizz, but how else do you see bartenders using it?
Well, this will be the challenge, to be honest. This will be the challenge because it hasn't been used in cocktails for quite a long time, but traditionally it was. There are some classics with it, like the sloe gin fizz and the Charlie Chaplin, the sloe gin cocktail. And there's a drink that was often drunk in the pubs of England called the Long Peddler, which is essentially just a simple highball, which is sloe gin and bitter lemon. But you don't really see bitter lemon a lot in the US. So if you can get a lemon tonic, or the other day we were just using the Sicilian lemonade and it was delicious. But I think that one of the challenges we will have bringing sloe gin back to the world and putting it back in the bars is seeing how people start to use it. It's a lost and forgotten kind of category of gin liqueur, really. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next, but that's the fun part of my job.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And do you use it similarly to gin? You mentioned the half-half, or do you use it not at its full strength, or?
Yeah, so actually to go into it a little bit more, so it's a gin liqueur, so it is sweet, even though it has those bitter flavors. It's lower ABV, so it's 29% ABV. So it's not really used as a base spirit. It can be mixed in with a base spirit. If you were to go to England and see how they traditionally drink it in England, it's often put in a hip flask for winter walks. Little winter warmer, when you take your brisk walk in the countryside during the winter months, you have your sloe gin.
I love this.
Yeah, it's a great little product. Sloe gin is to the English what limoncello is to the Italians. Everyone, grandparents usually make one, and it's a lot of fun. So it's also was once upon a time considered a poor person's version of port, and you would have it with cheese and a cheese plate. But I'll be honest, it's anybody's absolute luxury to drink sloe gin with a cheese plate. It's a perfect pairing, and so that's actually another way that I recommend it. So cocktails are something that we're going to encourage, but it's traditionally served neat or with cheese plates.
All right, Simon, here's what I'm imagining. One day when you take sloe gin to the next level and bring it back into the lexicon of the bartending community, even more than it may be, I think one of the Yeti colors of the month or the season could be the slow color. And you could just take that story of that flask. You know what I mean?
That's a brilliant marketing idea. I mean, who doesn't love Yeti anyway? And I'm like right there. And honestly, that color of slow is so vibrant and rich. And that's how you take your slow gin around with you. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. You're going to catch me walking around the suburbs of Chicago with a flask of sloe gin as I'm walking around the block. All right. So I always love the history lessons I get here. One of the main reasons I wanted to catch up is because in my world, and probably many people's world, I don't know if there's anyone, maybe even globally, who has their finger on the pulse of what's happening in gin and cocktails the way that you do. And so share with me like one of the big gin, I hate using the word trends, but like one of the big gin trends you're seeing right now.
The one, I'm sure we've talked about this one before. It would surprise me if we hadn't, Andrew, but the martini, the classic martini is going from strength to strength to strength. And everybody is drinking them. I'm seeing people of all ages, well, not all ages, all legal drinking ages.
Yeah.
Drinking martinis while they're out. And so I used to see it reserved to a more elderly person drinking a martini, but now the local bar near me is serving mini martinis, and there are people in their early 20s drinking them. And that's the big trend that I'm sort of seeing right now is mini martinis. So they're getting smaller and smaller. So people are really learning to just, because it's the first sip of a martini and perhaps the second and third that are the most magical. I went to a talk recently from the bartender from Satan's Whiskers, and he talked about how they obsess about making sure that the temperature of the martini and the dilution levels are perfect, and that once that martini is poured, it is on your table for you to have your first sip within 1 minute, so that it hasn't warmed up and it hasn't like sort of sat there for too long. long. And of course, he also mentioned how like they're all looking to see what the face looks like when they take that first wonderful sip of that martini, cool. Right? Yeah, exactly. And when someone doesn't take a sip immediately, they're like, you're missing the best bit.
This is not a good analogy, but I'm coming off of doing a discussion with a New York Times cooking editor. He has a new cookie book, Vaughn Vreeland, and it's almost like when you get a warm chocolate chip cookie, like that first bite you take and the second and third. And it's just like, there's something magical about that first bite of like a warm, gooey chocolate chip cookie. I love the mini size things. For me, I'm a slow drinker, so it helps. But secondly, when I was just at Bar Snack in New York, Ian does the snackery there. Like the small stuff. Yes. So good.
I think the snackery might have started like sort of that trend before the mini martini sort of emerged. But it's like having an amuse-bouche while you think about what you actually want to drink. You know, it's just like, you know, what a snackery while you're waiting or while you're choosing. Who says no to that?
Yeah, it's genius. And because I had a cocktail and we were going on somewhere else, and while I drink slow and I'm a lightweight, but they're like, can I get you something else? And I wanted to try something else, and she's like, maybe a little snackery. I was like, bingo, like that is perfect.
You know, bar snackers fast become New York's industry hangout bar. Like that's the bar you go into and you see all the other bartenders and see all the other people that work in the drinks and restaurant world. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm glad to see you and so successful there.
I saw you were in I didn't see you, but I saw you were in Copenhagen recently, and I know you're on the road a lot for what you do. You were in London, as you mentioned. You've been in New York. I'm curious, for each of these places, share maybe a bar you would recommend to listeners if they end up there. And then I'm also curious, anything you drank that kind of stopped you in your tracks or really made you say, wow.
Sure. I mean, Copenhagen is, as many of your listeners know, one of the most vibrant food cities on the planet, right? And one of the most influentially so, you know, obviously Noma and Alchemist and all of these like incredible places, but just beautiful food everywhere. And usually where there's good food, the bar scene can follow in that innovation and you sort of start to see those trends. And so when I'm in Copenhagen, I always make the joke that all roads lead to Boulder Dash. Boulder Dash is this sort of great cocktail bar. Joffrey, who's the sort of owner, head bartender there, has been a veteran of the industry. He even bartended in New York for a minute. I think that's where I met him. And he's like the sort of king of hospitality in the drinks world, I think, over in Copenhagen. The other bar I usually end up in is Ruby. That's always been quite a sort of magical place for me. But the bar that has impressed me most on my last couple of visits is a bar called Bird. And it's got vinyl. So you know I love vinyl from past episodes. It's got great vinyl. It excels in coffee culture as well. And then it does beautifully elegant drinks in very fine glassware. I had a coffee-based Negroni there that was so subtle, so delicious. Yeah, that blew my mind, but they had all of these very delicate Negroni riffs. And so I sort of had one or two of those before my dinner, and I thoroughly recommend going to Bird. And they now have two. I mean, but honestly, if you sort of look up best cocktail bars in Copenhagen, the list is amazing. I went to a place called Lulu, which is essentially, it was a vegan restaurant actually, with a great little cocktail bar there. I mean, I was only there for a day and a half, so I didn't hit too many places, but I've always loved Curfew and Pulp. So there's a lot of sort of great bars in Copenhagen, but I think Bird is the one I'm shouting out most at the moment. And then Ruby and Boulder Dash are my usual locals when I get to really enjoy that city.
Nice. And you and I were both in New York at separate times recently and probably visited some similar places, but I feel like there's this triangle happening in the East Village between Super Bueno and Bar Snack and Schmuck that is like, that's got to rival any triangle anywhere right now.
I mean, what a trilogy of new bars. And honestly, it's also near Double Chicken, Please. It's also near Death and Company. You know, it's also near some of these old PDT. You know, some of these great bars too. But that trilogy, we all love new places to go that are doing new things, and those three are incredible. I mean, obviously, Nacho and all of his success at Super Bueno has been amazing, but then seeing Schmuck and the lines around the block for that place. And the thing that blew my mind, just talking about this with a friend of mine yesterday, is we're there having a martini at Schmuck, and we're sipping away, and we talked about how the crisp moment of the first sip and how a cold martini is amazing. We're halfway through our martinis, and they come over with fresh, frozen glasses and pour your martini into it to keep it chilled. I mean, that is hospitality and that is genius. And I'm like, every time that happens, I get goosebumps thinking about it. I feel very special.
I mean, talk about a small detail that will just have you talking about an establishment you just went to for a long time.
Yes.
That simple maneuver. I used to work in a restaurant where the owner used to have us switch out all the water glasses on the table when people finished their meal and went on to dessert.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that just like little thing, that's incredible. That move was great.
I will tell you, I had a very special treat on this last trip to New York. I actually got to Schmuck, I got to Bar Snack. We did the launch of Slow Gin at Dear Irvin, which is really has been one of my favorite bars for many, many, many moons. You know, I got down to Milady's, which also does a fantastic martini. And then for the very first time, I went up to the new Waldorf Astoria, which is incredible. You know, like Michael Anthony's doing the kitchen, Jeff Bell from PDT, my friend Edie is doing the drinks there. And that is like, they've restored that to its former glory, or probably way beyond it, to be honest. It's very special. I mean, it's, you know, it's a place to go to for a treat and a special occasion. It's not a neighborhood hangout, but the level of hospitality and attention to detail. And again, just a beautiful martini that came with an olive and a twist, which I quite liked as well.
Are you seeing certain ingredients or styles of cocktails popping up in various places where you are?
You know, it started by saying I'm seeing the martini when you sort of called it a trend, if you like, if you will, but didn't want to. But what I am noticing is once upon a time it was, here's the martini, gin, vermouth, and maybe the bitters that you might get. What I'm seeing right now is people putting their own special twists and significant touches that make it their martini. So it suddenly becomes Schmuck martini, or it suddenly becomes the Bar Snack martini and it's theirs. And so they're playing about with blends of vermouth, for example, or putting sort of little additional ingredients in. So that's been nice to see. Certainly watching Mezcal still kind of like a powerhouse of creativity, but it's just what's been nice about Mezcal is watching people learn more about more of the spirits of Mexico, like the sotols and things like that. So that's been nice. Sort of everyone, it went to go beyond tequila, you went to Mezcal, and now you're moving on from there to some of the more regional versions of spirits that come from Mexico, and that's been nice to see. And I tried a chocolate liqueur. I tell you what, the espresso martinis everywhere still though. No matter where you go, you can get that in a pub now. It's amazing.
I'm seeing a little bit of savory, like leaning cocktails as well. There was like a Thai-inspired one I feel like I saw on the menu at Schmuck, which was really interesting.
I love the savory cocktails. That is a trend, actually. I wish that'd come out of my mouth first, but yes, I've been seeing that in a lot of places. And you'll see something like a coriander gimlet, or like basil, however you say it, gimlet, and drinks like that. So they're adding those savory flavors, and I think that's really sort of great. And I'm also seeing a little bit of a return of the dirty martini, but done well, which is, I still don't know how I feel about it, but people are starting to play with olive juices. And in fact, that martini at Schmuck's, which I love, they come along and they put the little dashes of the olive on it, which is kind of, in itself, that's a sort of adding of savory flavors to your martini.
Something just popped into my head, Simon, and I wanted to ask you for two reasons. One, the issue of waste or scraps in trim. And I know like Ian from Bar Snack was involved with Trash Tiki back in the day with his, I know he like did that with someone else. But this seems to be, it's come up before in our Beyond the Drink episodes, but it seems like it's coming up even more and more when I talk to Abe in Chicago, or Ryan, Mr. Lion, talk to him about it a little bit. And I love hearing it because selfishly, one of our partners of Beyond the Plate this season is a company called Mill that makes a food recycler for the home. And they're just about taking some of your waste and removing it from, a landfill, if you will. And I think it's a really interesting point because people talk about it from a kitchen perspective, and I feel like it's ingrained in chefs' culture, obviously not to waste food because that's money, but I think it's equally involved in a bartender's culture too, no?
I mean, the bar that does it best for me is Lioness in London, and that's where Ian came from. And I think that there is a conscious effort to essentially create waste-free, use all of the ingredients. And they have created a system where they share ingredients or the waste of ingredients between different restaurants and bars. And they make ingredients out of waste materials, which is sort of wonderful and fantastic in every way. And I think it's a big topic as well. I went to the MAD Symposium in Copenhagen, and I'm trying to think of, there's a restaurant in London called Silo, and that was a zero waste restaurant, and there was sort of a lot of great ideas shared there. And again, I was in the famous bakery in Copenhagen when I was there. I went every morning.
Where'd you go? Was that Heart or no?
Yeah, I've got
the other one.
It was Heart Bakery, and there's a new one was right by my hotel. I mean, I tell you what, every morning, I was there for 2 mornings, but those 2 mornings I walked over to Heart Bakery and I went, oh God, I could live like this every day.
I'm recording with Richard soon for the podcast. He's going to do one of our episodes.
I'm wondering if he's actually involved in the thing that he was selling in the shop. But one of the things they were selling in the shop was a pasta made out of the waste that is occurred from the baking of the bread. So, and I think the brand, I actually can't remember what the brand's name was, but ask him about it though, because it was being sold in there. And I just saw that Thad Vogler is a bartender from San Francisco, just released a brand called Waste, which is essentially cocktails upcycled. It's the first upcycled canned cocktail company. And I haven't tried it yet, but I read about it and I was like, this is really interesting next move. I wish he'd called me up to ask for investment. Because I know how good he is as a bartender. I know what a wonderful human being he is. And the idea is fantastic. So yeah, it just sort of popped up in sort of some news. And so I guess it's a week or two old, I would think. But that was kind of cool. But I think we have to be more and more conscious about waste as we go forward. That's one of the things that when we do the Forge Gin parties, we always use real glassware, no matter how big the party. So we're not throwing things away, and sometimes with 2,500 people, that's a lot of glassware. And every events planner I ever work with is like, really? I'm like, really?
I love that though. I love that you guys stand by that. I was just making a note of the canned cocktail. I want to check that out. And also, I just want to make reference to this because Simon mentioned Silo in London. The chef there is Douglas McMaster, I believe is his name.
That's right.
He's been referenced before too.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was hearing at the conference, I think that he's opened a place in Mexico City with somebody as well.
Excellent place as well that I am dying to go to. And we had Enrique Olvera on this season. And Richard Hart opened a bakery there too. Green Rhino in Mexico City.
Wow. And he's about to open at Claridge's in London too.
That's what I heard.
Hey, if you make pastries that good, fair play. The world needs to taste them.
I want a few bakeries and just fly between Copenhagen, Mexico City, and London. That sounds good.
I get to Mexico City this year, actually. And the one place I want to recommend there is Salon de Agave. They take you on a journey across Mexico of all the spirits. And so when I was sort of mentioning some of the spirits that I was hearing, I feel like the passion that they have been putting out at Salon de Agave is resonating, because a lot of people go there because of the rarities, and then they take that knowledge with them wherever their bar might be. But it was a lot of fun to learn about the spirits over there.
Yeah, this may or may not be a good segue, but as we're talking about Mexico and agave, when it comes to celeb brands of spirits, obviously there's a lot of tequilas and others, but do you try these, or what are your thoughts there?
I think that the industry has often focused on the successful ones and never really focuses on the failures. And so there's this sort of universal assumption that you just need a celebrity and you will be famous and your spirit will be good. And that is really not the case. And there is definitely, for me, a distinction between the ones that do it well and the ones that don't. There's obviously the ones that do it well from a marketing perspective because the celebrity actually puts the time in. And often, sometimes a celebrity might just put their name to a brand and then go back to making movies or music or whatever it might be. That then the marketing and the celebrity connection often gets lost. But then there are the ones that sort of really work hard for it. The Rock's tequila is actually decent tequila, and he puts in some energy, for example, right? Aviation gin. I did a blind taste test of celebrity gins recently, and there were two that I was like, this is fun and this is interesting. Margot Robbie has a gin that's got salt flavors from Australia, and I was really impressed. It was at a conference, and I think I made a joke at the conference that is, if there's one thing I was trying to be funny and break the ice, but I was like, if there's one thing that I hate more than celebrity brands, it's celebrity brands that are really good. And it was sort of like It's because I actually really enjoyed Margot Robbie's gin. You have the whole world, and now you make a really good gin too. Can't that be my legacy? And there was another one. Emma Watson's gin was made from Chardonnay, and I thought that was quite good as well. I thought that the rest were borderline average, but those two impressed me. I'll be honest. So I won't shout out the ones I didn't like.
Is there anyone, like if you were to crack open a bottle of Ford's gin right now and have a drink that you would love to sit and have a cocktail with?
Probably Eddie Vedder. I think it's wine. I mean, I've always loved the music and I've loved the journey of the band, but I've also loved the way that they've used their position of fame to do really good things. And that has always impressed me. I think they always carry such a positive message for so many different things and try to do so much to give back in their positions. And so I think that after all these years, I've been trying to think of more clever people to have a drink with who's a celebrity. But I think if I was being honest with myself, the one person I would just love to. And the thing is, I love wine, and Eddie Vedder always drinks a bottle of wine on stage. And so maybe it's not a gin this time. maybe it's a nice bottle from his collection. He drinks good wine on stage too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so our Herd audio newsletter. I share a restaurant, a product or ingredient, a recipe, something social impact related. I'd love to get one thing from you, could be based around your travels or not in general, that I can feature in an upcoming Herd episode.
I'll tell you the restaurant that I've loved lately, and it's brand new. It's shiny and new, and it's in London. It's called Motorino. A chef called Stevie Parley. And I don't know much about him, but everyone in London knows about him. He recently opened a restaurant called Town, and I went there and I was like, this is magnificent. And then he opened another restaurant within like 3, 4, or 5 months. And I was like, well, who does that? And I was like, well, I'm going to go check it out because the last one was great. And I was like, this one was even better. And so Motorino, and it's like trying to explain the cuisine. It's almost like modern English cuisine meets Italian influence in many ways. It's definitely driven by ingredients. It's ingredient driven for sure. But I would say that's the restaurant, Motorino in London. That's my probably shout out there.
Love it.
I always talk about like the nomad and side hustle because that's like Leo coming out from the US. And I'm always like, whenever I go there, I love hanging out. But I think that Dante popping up at Claridge's reminds me of when they first reopened the original in New York City. And I just could sit there and sort of drink a Negroni all afternoon. And this is how it sort of feels at the one in London at the moment. Really enjoying that. Plus, Claridge's. I feel like Dante being there is an excuse for me to live the high life for a minute.
Now you're going to be able to get like a pastry or some bread from Hart and then sip on a cocktail. All right. This was awesome. I always love connecting with you, Simon. This is great. And we've had such a fantastic lineup. Big thanks to you all for that, for the season of Beyond the Drink, having some great conversations with some awesome bartenders. And I always love talking to this community of people and just diving a little deeper into what keeps them going and what they're up to. So appreciate you all. Thank you.
I was gonna say, at this point, you've had the best of the best in the chef world and now the bartender world. It's amazing. Every time I scroll through all the people that you've had on the show, I'm like, damn. Actually, when you asked me who I like to drink with, there's a few people in there, from the creative perspective. Love to have a drink within the food world, that's for sure. So you have one of the best jobs doing this, I think. It's cool.
It's fun. Have good conversations. Good fun.
I love it.
Awesome, man. Well, good to see you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Find all social media links for myself, Beyond the Plate, and Beyond the Drink guests in the episode notes and on beyondtheplatepodcast.com. As always, big thanks to the whole Beyond the Plate team. Don't forget to join us back here next Wednesday for an episode of Beyond the Plate, and every other Monday right here for Herd, our short audio newsletter where I'm sharing what's on my plate, from culinary insights to restaurants and recipes, all in just a few minutes. And if you have a moment, we'd be grateful for your support by rating, reviewing, and even hitting that subscribe button to the podcast. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Drink, a production of Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy.